Good. We're good to go. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to this general committee meeting of February 26th. I'd like to call the meeting to order at exactly 9 a.m. And with that, Councillor Renwick, would you mind reading the land acknowledgement, please?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty Number 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaty of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take action towards real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations. Miigwech.
Thank you very much, Councillor Renwick. And of course, I neglected to mention that we do have regrets from three councillors today, Councillor Clark, Councillor Morrison, and Councillor Stone. But I can confirm we do have quorum. So there we go. We will move on. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none, we are going to. Oh, I see. This I have to read because it's a change in the agenda. All right. I have a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Armour, seconded by Councillor Renwick. It is recommended that the General Committee meeting agenda dated Wednesday, February 25th, 2025 be adopted as printed and circulated with the exclusion of item 5.1.4, Corp 2025-18, Financial Reserve Policy Repeal and Replace, and item 5.1.7, Training, Reserves, and Obligatory Funds. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. So now, and I already did the pecuniary. I'm doing everything backwards today. I'm sure that does something. So I'm moving to deputations, and we have some guests with us today. David Brushy, and we're joined by Salim Hall. Salim, are you joining, David? You just is he a cheering section? And also, okay, welcome. Okay, so you've come well supported. Would you like to join us at the table? Thank you, David. And David, for those who might be watching, is with the Muskoka Community Futures Development Corporation. Welcome.
Rookie mistake, right? No, actually, it's truly a pleasure to be here. I was saying to Denise earlier, I probably don't come often enough just to provide general updates on what Muskoka Futures is up to and the things that we're doing to really support economic development in our region, particularly here in Huntsville in this case. It's kind of interesting being here, sitting behind a couple of guys from hockey, so I will try my best to follow protocols in terms of names and things, but we'll see how that goes. Anyway, Muskoka Futures, I think many of you probably know more or less what we do. There's a slide deck somewhere, I believe, a PowerPoint up. I don't see it myself, so I will do my best to try to stick to it. But basically, we are a local organization. We're funded by the federal government, but we're not a federal government agency. We're an independent not-for-profit. You can flip to the second slide, please. And then, and basically, I would say the intent here is that we make decisions locally based on local individuals and the communities that we serve. So our board is local individuals, our staff are obviously all local, and we support primarily economic development through supporting businesses, through strong support services, advisory services. Thank you very much. And through an investment fund. And we are very fortunate as an organization that we have one of the largest investment funds in all of Canada under the Community Futures Program. There are 270 organizations like ourselves from coast to coast to coast. And through that, we obviously make loans to businesses really around looking at what impact they make on the community. So we're not a traditional lender by any means. We are very unique. We are really not comparable to any other type of lender, as we are very patient, and we're really asked two questions when we assess a loan. It says, how does our support help that business succeed? How does their success benefit the community? And that's really when we present it to our board for approvals, is really what they're looking for, that we've aligned that loan application and the needs of that business to our mandate and our strategy. And so again, it's very different. We therefore really focus on some really core values and guiding principles. So we're very client focused. It's something that we really addressed 7 or 8 years ago. Went through a significant sort of renewal of the organization and really put a huge emphasis and attention on customer service and being responsive to our clients so that when they needed our support, we were there and we could get decisions to them quickly. And we did a significant outreach and strategic planning process a couple years ago. I'm really proud of the fact that our clients report a 95% satisfaction level with our services. So we're responsive, we're patient, we work with them. If things aren't going well, we're still there. We rework terms and conditions to really support them to the best of our ability to help them succeed, because that's where the impact comes from. It's not us directly, it's through those businesses that we support that we see positive impact. That's job creation, job maintenance. If a company's struggling, we can put some funds in and help sort of settle things. It's bringing new businesses to the community to help diversify things. It's responding in crisis. Flood loans, relief loans during the pandemic, those are all the types of things that we really do to looking for that positive economic impact. Typically, our loans are about a maximum of 150. We have the ability to go to 300,000 at times under some certain considerations. We're mandated by the federal government, and this is part of why I'm here today. I speak to the physician recruitment program idea, is that it's about the interest rate really in a certain way here. So we are mandated by the federal government to charge 2 percentage points above bank prime at minimum. So bank prime currently is about 5.2%, so we're about 7.2. This day and rate, that's not a terrible rate. And a lot of our clients that go to the bank, they're going to get a similar rate. But we can also go with, in certain situations, emergencies, crises, partnerships with municipalities or other partners, go to FedNor and get special rates for certain, again, initiatives or purposes. So what we're really looking for here is really, I think from council today, just hopefully an agreement to look into this and explore this a little bit further and develop some, develop the ideas. Not expecting an answer today as to, yes, let's go on this project. This is more of a, is this something that would be complementary to what the town's already doing around physician recruitment? We know that there's been some great early successes in that program in terms of recruiting new physicians to our community. I'm also aware that, like I'm sure everybody is, every community I think across the country is looking at these types of programs. So our thought here is this is sort of another option, another offering that may help in the overall package that could be offered around physician recruitment. With that said, I also think there's an opportunity here to consider this as maybe an idea around general investment in our health services in our community that is not necessarily doesn't have to be limited to physician recruitment. That could be about existing physicians or other healthcare service providers looking to expand their business, purchase new equipment or things, and trying to find a way to help them, knowing what a critical role healthcare plays in our communities at all levels. Really quick aside, I think everybody's probably faced this at some time in their lives, but 25 years ago, my wife and I in a city in Ontario, we lived there, couldn't find a primary care physician 25 years ago. So this is nothing new, right? This is something that I think has just gotten worse. And I really was pleased to see a few months ago when the town launched their program, the initiative that you're undertaking. It happened to coincide with me being at a conference and hearing from one of our colleagues up a little further north that was looking at the similar type of program with some of their partners in their communities to really launch something to provide some incentivized financing to help physicians relocate to that community. There's a number of community futures offices across Ontario looking at these types of programs. And so again, this is really an ask to maybe, I don't know whether this goes to a committee or whatever the format is, the procedure is here, but to really look at this in a bit more detail and consider if it's something that you feel would be of value to as a complementary piece of your physician recruitment activities. So this next slide is really just, as it says, illustrative. I want to put something in there to sort of show what are the sort of the general terms look like and repayments would be on a loan from Muskoka Futures. So I put in sort of what is our usual max of $150,000, the interest rate at 5.2. So in this case, the idea here would be if we can get FedNor's approval, if the town is interested in a partnership, we'd ask FedNor for approval to only charge bank prime versus the increased 2% the minimum that we are supposed to charge. There is also an option to go to FedNor and actually ask for to charge a lower rate than bank prime. Again, those are all things that I think that further conversation, discussion with the town would be things we would consider in that process. I use a typical amortization of 10 years. That's for us kind of a normal thing if we do a $150,000 loan, 10 years. And then I just sort of split the interest in half in terms of, if the town wanted to cover interest as an incentive for a period of time, just for, illustration again, 5 years to see what the total interest would be. It's broken out year by year so you can understand, again, how much interest would accrue on a loan over a 10-year period. Again, the idea here being that the town could cover a percentage of the interest over a period of time as an incentive for the physician that would borrow money from Muskoka Futures. We are not allowed as an organization ourselves to reduce our interest rates below a certain amount without really forming a partnership with another organization. We have to charge this, we can't do grants, we're not a granting organization. So this is really about how do we structure a loan that could be of benefit to physicians, either in our community, coming to our community, or again, other healthcare service providers. Historically, we have dabbled, I would say, in some of the healthcare in our communities more through, massage therapists, physiotherapy clinics, dental offices. Those are places that we've invested and provide loans to help them start up or expand. But primary care has never been an area that we've been involved with. So again, new idea for us. I think where this really aligns back to our strategic plan is really trying to find new ways to drive better economic impact from our investment activities. And in talking with Councillor Morrison, about this a few months ago, what really struck me was how he phrased it at the time as a crisis, right? That there was such a significant population in our community here that did not have access to a primary care physician, that this was something that we could actually really act on and have a different level of impact as an organization, and yet still align very well with our own mandate. So that's sort of the financial sort of really quick down and dirty on sort of how a loan would be structured in our sort of typical circumstances, and where there may be some consideration for where the appetite might lie for the town to consider this. So really the next steps, as I said, this is really something I see as just an idea still in the concept at this time. There are some key criteria to figure out. Obviously, there's just the appetite for the town to be interested in doing this, but then how much, what would a maximum loan amount be that you'd want to do? What interest rate would you want to charge? Obviously, that has implications. That's good for the physician or whoever the recipient is, but it's also something that could reduce the cost to the town as well. And we can, again, package that and ask to Fedor for special permission. And then just the length of time, right, that you want to, maybe incentivize this. And then from a real administrative side, is for ourselves, is how often would the town remit the payments to Muskoka Futures on the interest? Because that's really the side here, right? Is by incentivizing this, if the town were to cover part of it, you would basically be paying interest to us for a period of time on behalf of the physician, and then the physician would be paying the principal, and whatever remaining interest was not incentivized. Right? So again, we can't sort of forego charging the interest to a client. We're not allowed to do that in our terms and conditions in our program, but another organization, if they wanted to be part of this, would basically offset that by making a contribution on behalf of any individual loan to Muskoka, paying a percentage of that interest that would be charged. So again, we see this as a potential another tool in that toolbox kind of thing, right, for the physician recruitment side. At the same time, I think there's just another opportunity to say, these are things we're thinking about as an organization in terms of how do we play a role in different issues in our community. And so I want to leave you, I guess, maybe really with one other thing, is that this is one idea. At the end of the day, if there's other areas, other issues that we see some type of model where we could be a part of, we'd obviously be happy to have those conversations with staff and council as well. That's really it at this point. I'd be happy to take questions if there is any, or that's appropriate. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. And thanks for coming forward. You're quite right. I don't think you've been here all that often. It's really good when you do, because you Community Futures is such an important organization in our community. So thank you for coming. And just off the top of my head, I think any idea that contributes to the doctor or physician recruitment program is a good thing. Certainly I have a couple of questions, but I can hold off before I go to committee. If you have questions directly, maybe I'll kick it off. So the first thing I guess I think about is we have locked in our 2-year budget. So this, not to say that, I guess, the way we're funding our physician recruitment package has a little more flexibility, I think. But I guess the question would be to Director McKenzie, I think, though she's not here to, we've got Suzanne. To our Suzanne Diller, our Deputy Treasurer. Is this something that, have we done this kind of thing before? Probably not, because we haven't, I think, been asked to. Under our current regulations, is this something that we could do?
I don't believe we have done it before. I can definitely check with Julia when she's back, but I believe we can, but we'd have to do some research and look into that.
And that's a good answer in the sense, that, okay, you could answer that. CAO Corey.
Sorry, and I do apologize to Ms. Diller because Julie and I did have a conversation. So there's always a question of whether or not by providing funds if you're bonusing an organization.
Right.
So in discussions with the treasurer, she has advised that this would not be considered bonusing, and the town would just have to determine where the funding source was coming from. So just with a really quick investigation, it does appear that we could do it, but we would ask for staff to come back with a more solid response, but it does sound like we can do it.
Well, that's good to know.
Great.
That's great. So that hurdle has already been
Yes.
crossed. So that's interesting. And now I'm going to go to Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, David, for coming. And I've known you. I don't play hockey with you,
No,
but
I don't hold it against you.
no, thank you. But I've known you for many, many years, and I always think of communities like community. This program is just David Brushy as well. Like you're just so connected
Oh,
to it,
thank
which
you.
is great. But I just love that you're thinking sort of outside the box, and it's unfortunate that the two councillors who are really that spearheaded the recruitment here in town are not here today, but I'm sure you've had discussions with Councillor Morrison, but this is something that I would be very happy or very interested in looking at and having staff look at, because I think it's just it's something that could move. It's such a desire. We need this in our community right now, and I think you've identified it, and it's something that working together with the town could make it even better. So thank you for bringing that forward.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Thanks for coming. Great presentation. I'm very interested in it, actually. It's unfortunate we passed that 2-year budget already, but it definitely would be an incentive to our doctor recruitment incentive program already, for sure. And I think it could fall under, would it be able to fall under our current guidelines that we set in place for our doctor recruitment process with 60, 70, and 80,000 if you take on a new practice or current practice and bring on new? So would we something that we could control, or would you have to control how it works?
So I really see this as, thank you for the question. I actually really think this is something that I see that it's up to the town to set really the terms and conditions of this and have those, I guess, controls in place. We would simply really be administering the dollars. We have an investment fund, we lend money, right? And as we do it obviously for our community benefit and impact. And to me, this is something where we'd work with you to do that, but make it work so that, you know, really the town is really making the decisions. If you're having a new physician that comes in, actually, I've already heard from one of the new physicians that reached out to us looking to, you know, understand what it is that we do and how would they may, you know, our funding may be able to support them. So I think there is potentially a gap there. I think maybe appreciate the 2-year budget presents a constraint, but maybe the option here is to look at something as a bit of a pilot project for that first 2 years, that you can see if there's room somewhere in the budget to be prepared to do a certain number of these under certain criteria to your, you know, to be defined by the town. And then we are simply really administering the funds in order to do that. So I think I'm hopeful there's a way to work that, despite the fact that, yes, the 2-year budget was passed.
And you know what? I absolutely love, sorry, Deputy Mayor Armour, I jumped in and you might have had a follow-up. Did you have a follow-up?
You have authority over me, ma'am.
This morning, it's just a weird morning, that's for sure. I know. I love pilot projects, and there is something also coming on stream. Perhaps this year, I'm hoping. Town of Huntsville is setting up a community. What are we calling it? Huntsville Community Fund. So, which is another vehicle for collecting funds, and there will be a defined criteria what those funds will be used for. One of them will be for sure health. Right. And so we have other options available to us, I think, sometime in 2025. So I think again, I think it's great that you're here today presenting for those who didn't know about the loan programs, potential loan programs, and the possibility of additional relief. I think that's good to put it on the table. And if we're listening to Councillor Renwick, it sounds like we have interest to pursue what this might look like.
Excellent.
That's really great. And also Deputy Mayor Armour. So yeah, he said that too. So, and now Councillor Fitzgerald would like to jump in.
Thank you, Worship, and thanks, Dave, for coming. your first slide, it says $16.5 million. That's what we've invested in the community through investment and loans.
So that
since
is
the
our-
inception of the program. Or?
That is our current net asset of our investment fund. Of that, about $9.5 million is currently invested in loans, and we have more or less the balance of that is sort of cash on hand ready to advance. We typically lend around $2 to $2.25 million every year. Just for context, the federal government's target for us is only $600,000 a year, but we feel that's awfully very low. We have an extremely strong relationship with FedNor, and part of the reason our investment fund is so significant compared to other community futures across the country, as I said, we are one of the largest investment funds in Canada through this program, is I think the work of our organization in terms of being very forward-looking, being innovative, and coming up, looking for different ways to promote and support businesses. But at the same time, when there has been moments of crisis, and the pandemic's a great example, is that the Regional Relief and Recovery program that the federal government launched, which was basically loans to businesses that those dollars flowed through community futures offices. So we did $5.5 million in relief loans in Muskoka, which is at least two times higher than the next highest CFTC in the country. And we got those funds because FedNor understood that we have the ability and the processes and the governance in place to advance loans and manage them appropriately and do it quickly, all under that guise of how it's benefiting our community. So a long way back of saying, trying to answer your question, but I really want to make that point, is that I think that we're very well positioned to look at these types of initiatives. We have the funding. It's not, 16 million isn't in the bank. It's not our total loans over time. Honestly, I'd have to go back and look, but we've been around 35 years, and we advance, anywhere. Years ago, it might have been $1 million a year. Now we're two and a quarter. I think we'll be pushing that in the next couple of years to be probably lending more over $3 million a year. Average loan is about $60,000 is sort of would be give or take our average. So we're supporting a lot of business in our community, and we have the ability to do a lot more. And I think this is another program I think that could really, get our name out there a little bit more and really have another level of impact.
Thanks for the answer. You're not, like the hockey reference, you're not just an average goalie.
Oh, thank you.
How willing and how often do you approach FedNor for special rates?
It's not very often. The other time we've done it, so in the relief program on the pandemic, we didn't have to approach them. That was a federal, sort of program they launched. We delivered it, and again, we just delivered it very efficiently. We did 148 loans through that program, which for an organization like us, it's a lot. We typically do maybe 25 to 30 new loans in a year. But the other time we've approached them for special consideration is around flooding in Muskoka in the spring. I think it was 2013 and 2019. There's pretty significant flooding, so we launched a 0% interest loan program. In each of those years, with FedNor's blessing within hours, to be quite honest, they rarely say, maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, but we find they rarely say no to us. I'll cross my fingers that doesn't come back to bite me, but no, we have a very, very strong relationship with FedNor, and I think they appreciate how we are structured and how we operate, and it gives us some flexibility to try things differently. And so the flood loans were interesting. We started that program as being very small loans, $25,000, really seeing it as a bridge as people waited to see what the response was from their insurance companies. The one great story that came out of it was Fanotech here. Fanotech, people may remember back in, I think it was 2013, had 3.5, 4 feet of water in their entire plant. They heard about our program, which was only $25,000. They came to us, and we lent them a lot more than that to help them get back and through that challenge. And it's a great story for us, right? Even though it's a little ways back in time now, but
Still, it's
Thanks
a
for
great
that, Dave,
story.
and appreciate everything you're doing there.
great. Thanks, Jason.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thank you, Worship. I'm just curious, is this a new concept of like a municipality paying back the interest or something, or is this something already happened, or are we reinventing the wheel here?
So I would say that it's specific to physician recruitment. It might be a little bit new, but I go back to the pandemic. It's a pretty good example of a lot of sort of innovative things that we ended up doing, not just Muskoka Futures, but the Community Futures program organizations across the country. Is maybe some of you may remember this, is we came to district council back at the early days of the pandemic and asked for a loan from council, from the district, to create our own relief loan fund. Before we knew what was happening within the federal government and what program we'd be running for them. And the district lent us $750,000 to sort of seed an initial fund. And that was another instrumental piece in us being able to then leverage that with the federal government through FedNor to do $5.5 million in lending. we were able to also repay all those loans, that money back to the district, I think ahead of schedule. Again, in part, that broader partnership behind the federal government at the table. So it's a little bit new, perhaps, but we are seeing more and more communities across Ontario, for sure, stepping in partnership with Community Futures offices in different types of programs.
It's awesome. I really appreciate that. CEO Corey.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. So with respect to the funding piece, and Chair Alcock noted that our 2-year budget has already been finalized, but one thing that certainly could be considered by staff and by committee is that we have the incentive program already, which offers $60,000, $70,000, or $80,000 to doctors who sign the agreement. One of the provisions in there could be if they wish to access this loan, that the portion of interest the municipality would contribute comes off the top of that money. So it's already budgeted. It's already, I think we have it in for 10 doctors. I can't recall how many have signed to date. I think it's 3 or 4. So it could just be something, a provision within the doctor recruitment agreement that they can either choose the cash, or if they need to borrow money, then a portion of the interest that the town owes would come off that money. So that's something staff could investigate and report back on.
So you see, in the last 20 minutes, we've gone from, we've got a 2-year budget that's been set to, we've looked at about 3 or 4 ways which we might be able to do this. So
Yep.
there we go, a lot of progress in 20 minutes.
Yes.
I think it's fantastic. Yeah, I know. and next, it will, thank you for coming in.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I do believe, late at the last part of our agenda, we do have a motion. So at the end of our meeting, we have a motion.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Mayor Alcock and council. It's been my pleasure to be here. I will certainly endeavor to come back more frequently.
That's perfect.
And it's
Thank
been
you.
it's been very nice. This reminds me of kind of a bit of our board meetings. Our staff, it feels very relaxed, and I appreciate that. It's been great.
Well, that's the way we like to
Yeah.
do things.
So
Yeah.
thanks for the great discussion. Really,
Okay.
really appreciate it.
Thanks,
We
Stephen.
will talk soon.
Okay. Bye. Bye. All right. So we do have Stefan Zerbeck from Planscape here to provide a deputation on one of the reports before us today on RC 16 2024 THE and ORA closure at 4266 South Portage Road. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the time. A little rush this morning. It was a weird morning. You're absolutely right. I got stuck behind the wonderful snow clearing individuals in Bracebridge for 10 minutes. I'm like looking at my watch and I don't have a link to the meeting. And I'm like, what am I going to? Anyway, so I'm here. So it's been a morning. Thank you. I just wanted to, first of all, thank staff for the work that they did with this application. There's been a lot of back and forth with this and a lot of changes to the application. I've reviewed the staff report in front of you, fully support what's being recommended to you today. Again, I think staff are absolutely correct in terms of their analysis with the road allowance closure policies and the criteria there. Makes perfect sense. Of course, I've looked at the official plan, and it absolutely conforms to the official plan. With respect to the concerns that were discussed between the neighbor, I have personally had discussions with them, and understand their concerns, but I would like to say that our clients, when they develop, I mean, they have no plans to develop, so there's really nothing to share at this point, but when they develop, they will absolutely respect, what the distance between the neighbors, the development themselves. They're both very, very large properties. I think the chances of anything being built right next to it are probably slim. But again, at this point, they really don't know what they're doing at this point. Main thrust behind the closure of the road allowance is the 4266 parcel is on a blind corner. There's very little room for an entranceway, a safe entranceway. It might happen at the west end, possibly, but they figured in order to be safe, maybe they can just access it from the 4202 as an alternative at that point. So that was sort of the main reason behind that. Other than that, again, I'm here to answer any questions, and again, we fully support the recommendation from staff in front of you today. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Stefan. Are there any questions? Look, and you made it here on time, everything, and very short presentation, but very thankful that you were here. It's always good to hear some support or whatever for the
Excellent.
upcoming reports. So,
Thank you for your time.
all right, thank you. All right, so with that, I am going to turn it over to Councillor Renwick to take over as chair.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I will do my best to fill the shoes of my councillor next to me, Councillor Morrison, who does a fabulous job doing corporate services. This is my first time doing it, so bear with me. So we have in front of us report 5.1.1, and it is report number C Corp 2025-15. And I'll read the motion. It is recommended that application RC 16-2024 100860073 Ontario Incorporated, 4266 South Portage Road receive preliminary approval in the accordance with Section 6.7 of the Permanent Highway Closure Policy. Further, that application RC 16-2024 be amended to include the entire road allowance abutting 4202 South Portage Road, and further that the mayor and the clerk are hereby authorized to sign the necessary documentation pertaining to the closure and sale of said road allowance. And sorry, thank you. I will. I just realized this. That was moved by Councillor Fitzgerald and seconded by Councillor Cloutier. And I'll turn it over to Marie.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Renwick. So further to the deputation you just heard, we received an application from the owner of 4266 South Portage Road with respect to purchasing the road allowance abutting its property. The applicant owns 2 parcels of land which are not the same depth. The original application was to purchase the entire road allowance adjacent to the larger parcel of land owned by the applicant. However, the neighbor objected to the closure and the application was reduced to the length of the smaller parcel. However, if the smaller portion of the road allowance abutting 4266 South Portage Road is deemed surplus, then so too is the remaining portion that is adjacent to 4202 South Portage Road. While the amended application for the closure of a portion of the road allowance is within staff's authority, staff's recommendation for the sale of the entire length is not, due to the abutting neighbor's objection, so the report is being presented to committee for consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Marie. Are there any questions around the table? Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks very much, Councillor Renwick. I'm just, I think it says in the report that you can access that through White House Road? Oh,
Sorry. The road allowance goes up to White House Road, but at that area, it's pretty wet. Like,
Right.
I don't see it ever being utilized.
right, so they're looking at purchasing the whole thing right to White House Road?
No, just to the top of the
Top of the
larger
prop-
parcel. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions around the table? Your Worship.
Thank you, Chair Renwick. I'm sure it was in the report, but there was consultation with the Snowmobile Club, and they said they no longer use that.
Correct. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions around the table, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Unanimously, and that is carried. Thank you. Okay, and we are going to move on to, just double check. So 5.1.2, and I'll read the motion, is moved by Nancy Alcock and seconded by Dion Schumacher, Councillor Schumacher. Whereas in 2020, the town entered into agreements with Hidden Valley Highlands Ski Area and the Huntsville Mountain Bike Association for the purpose of the use of publicly accessible mountain bike trails. And whereas the terms of the agreement end in August of 2025, there is a desire for renewal. Now, therefore, it is recommended that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to sign the following updated agreements as outlined in Report Corp 2025-16 for the purposes of publicly accessible mountain bike trail. And that's number 1, a trail lease agreement with Hidden Valley Highlands Ski Area, Schedule A, which is attached. And number 2, a trail development and maintenance agreement with the Huntsville Mountain Bike Association, Schedule B. And further that, the amendment to the delegation of authority bylaw as shown on Schedule C in Report Corp 2025-16 be presented to Council for final consideration. And we have Lauren McDermott here to speak to it. Thanks, Lauren.
Okay, so through you, Chair Renwick, this report outlines the proposed agreements between Hidden Valley Highlands Ski Area and the Huntsville Mountain Bike Association and the town of Huntsville for the purposes of continuing to develop and maintain publicly accessible mountain bike trails in Huntsville. It's important to note that the town is included in this agreement so that the bike trails are publicly accessible. So if private lands were utilized and the town was not included, the trails would be privately operated and users would most likely be charged a fee or have access only through a membership option. So to help streamline and reduce need to come back, we have recommended a 5-year term with a renewal clause for a further 5 years if all parties agree. In addition, delegated authority is recommended for special events, so approval can be granted as long as it is to the satisfaction of the Director of Corporate and Community Strategy and the Director of Financial Services and Treasurer. And I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Lauren. Your worship.
Thank you, Chair Renwick. I don't have a question. I just want to say I love this agreement. It's and I love the changes about delegated authority and extending it. This is one of those creative type agreements that creates publicly accessible trails, and I'm very happy that we're extending it and doing all of that. So, absolutely supportive.
Thank you, Your Worship. Any other comments around the table? No? Is this a no-brainer? All right. Thank you very much, Lauren. And so all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Thanks, Lauren. All right. And sorry, the following 5.1.3 is actually for information only, but it's Corp 2025-17, and it is the 2023 Financial Indicator Review. And unfortunately, well, we have Suzanne Diller here, but our treasurer, Julie McKenzie, is not here, but Suzanne, you'll give us an update on this. And it's really just a health report, isn't it, on how we've done or how our finances are. So it was an interesting read, I must say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Renwick. The Financial Indicator Review Report provides a snapshot of some key indicators set by the province as it relates to the year 2023. This was received in 2025 and is based on the 2023 Financial Information Return. The indicators that are attached to the report are broken down between sustainability and flexibility indicators. Huntsville has a low risk on all of the indicators with the exception of asset consumption ratio, which is the closing amortization balance as a percentage of the total cost of the capital assets. The total cost of our capital assets are $193 million, and the total amortization to date or consumption of those assets is $118 million. This has been rated as moderate and has been moderate from between 2019 and 2023. It should be noted that the median and average of our regional group is also at the moderate risk comparatively. This ratio indicates how much of the asset's life expectancy has been consumed. So if you only had one asset and it was only 1 year old out of a 10-year life expectancy, your ratio would be very low. Comparatively, if you had an asset that was 8 years old out of 10 years of life expectancy, the ratio would be really high. So the majority of your assets, the majority of the town's assets are near the end of their life compared to those that have been recently replaced. So we also have included some information again regarding the Municipal Fiscal Circumstances Index, MFCI, which is also included in the report, as well as provided the update index for 2025. The MFCI is used in the calculation of the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund as one of the many indicators. There was minimal change in this indicator between 2024 and 2025. A lower number indicates that the municipality is relatively positive circumstance compared to other municipalities in Ontario. That's a lot, sorry.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's a lot. And it is a very it's a great snapshot of how we are, like how the health of our finances. And it's actually not. It's interesting to understand that we're not in a bad way. We could be better, but are there any questions around the table for Suzanne? Again, this is just for information, but I'm sure you've all read it. Yeah. All right. Seeing no questions, and like I said, thank you for presenting that. And you're going to stay with us for, we're going on to number 5.1.5, and this is Corp 2025-19, the 2024 Treasurer's Statement on development charges. And again, this is for information only. Did I miss something?
1.4?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you removed it.
I believe it's been moved, yes? Yes. Yep. So Suzanne, I'll pass it over to you.
For the, sorry, for the Corp 2025-18?
Dash 19.
19.
Yeah,
Okay,
the
perfect.
treasurer's statement, development charges.
Great, okay.
Yep.
So this report presented provides the annual report of development charges for 2024. Development charges collected are put into obligatory reserves and separated out by service areas such as administration, roads, fire, indoor and outdoor recreation, and library. These funds are recognized as revenue when we use the funding for growth-related projects each year. Overall, the DC development charge obligatory fund increased by approximately $500,000 over the prior year. Some highlights to point out, we collected just over $750,000 in development charges. The funds we had earned almost $250,000 in interest and investment income. We utilized $480,000 in DC funds for various projects, including DC SETI, Howland Drive sidewalks. We used some for the fire pumper, some hydraulics equipment for the fire department, Macaulay Robertson Park lighting, skateboard park, Port Sydney basketball court, Utterson multi-courts, Rivermill Park washroom, and some library materials. Also, funding was used for Forbes Hill and Canada Summit Center debenture funding. I'm available for any questions.
And are there any questions around the table for Suzanne? Great, another good report. Lots of information there as well, but I don't see any questions. And again, it's for information. Your worship, you have a look on your face, but no?
Thank you for.
You're welcome.
Sure, Renwick. I do, but you know what? I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for the report. There are a number of things in there, but I think I'll follow up after. Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I think you're finished for this morning. Are you? Well, you do have the training later, but that's coming up. I'm going to go over to, this is report 5.1.6, and I'll go over to our CAO, and it's CAO 2025-1 and Lakeland Holding Limited 2024 fourth quarter shareholder update, and that's presented by our CAO, Denise Corey.
Thank you, Chair Renwick. So again, this is just our quarterly report from Lakeland Holding, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions around the table? You guys are just making it very easy for me today. Well, thank you very much for all of us. I don't see any questions, but thank you for the report, CAO Corey. So that was for information only. Now I'm going to bring Suzanne back. So for report or for 5.1.7, and this is training, and Suzanne's going to help us through some asset management training.
Thank you, Chair Renwick. We have a slideshow that's going to be coming up here in a second. So I'm here today to go over some asset management training. The training is meant to be a quick refresher on asset management. There's been some interest, which is really exciting based on the involvement in the budget process, specifically the capital budget, and a greater understanding of the town's capital funding gap. This is also great timing because later this year, we'll be bringing forward an update to our current asset management plan to meet the July 1st, 2025 regulatory deadline. Today, we'll go over some definitions, why asset management is important, the goals of asset management, an overview, and we'll take a minute to talk about life cycle. We'll also talk about service levels, proposed service levels, and at the end, everyone's favorite topic, financing. We thought it'd be good to include some definitions. I shared these in the capital in the budget process as well, but just to refresh everybody's memory, capital asset accounting, otherwise known as tangible capital asset accounting (TCA), requires that we value assets at cost and recognize a part of that cost in our financial statements each year over the life of the asset. We must track changes to the assets, including additions, write-downs, and this is in accordance with PSAS. The asset inventory from Citywide, which is the software that we use to track our assets, ties into the total assets in the town's general ledger accounts and our financial software. Capital budget. The town's council approves the plan to purchase, build, maintain, and repair and replace assets, including infrastructure. Capital assets also directly and indirectly impact the town's operating budget, as funds are needed to cover day-to-day operating expenses associated with those assets. This is generally for a 1 to 2 year period and is presented and finally approved at the same time as the town's operating budget. Capital forecast. The town staff prepare to purchase, build, maintain, repair, and replace assets, including infrastructure, over a period of 2 to 20 years. This forecast is generally presented at the same time as the capital budget to give council and the public a forecast of the spending required on capital assets in the future. And capital inventory. So this, we keep a detailed listing of all the capital assets that have been included in the town's asset inventory software, and includes assets includes asset attributes such as replacement cost, historical cost, condition, and physical description. This inventory is used to develop the town's asset management plan. Capital reserves. Reserves are set aside by council to support the existing capital inventory. Any new assets being added to the inventory will need to have the associated annual amount considered to be included in future budgets to increase the reserves in association with those new assets. Growth forecast. The growth forecast is a 10-year plan for assets that will be required as a result of new growth. This plan is included in the town's development charges background study and is approved by council. The funds collected by development charges will be utilized to support the funds needed for these growth-related projects. And Municipal Asset Management Plan, MAMP or AMP. This document is approved by council and is required of the OREG 588/17. This plan includes several components at a point in time, including levels of service, life cycle management, and financial strategies. So why is asset management important? It's required under the Canada Community Building Fund, CCBF, administered by AMO. The town receives almost $700,000 a year from the CCBF towards infrastructure projects. Other organizations also require the town to meet the current regulations for asset management to be eligible for funding. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, has many funding opportunities that have come up from time to time. Reporting for these grants includes reporting on asset management efforts. Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OSIF, provides annual funding around $620,000 in 2025, and new requirements for this funding is providing annual updates for replacement costs for our existing assets, which forms a part of their calculation. In many parts of Ontario, infrastructure that was existing is degrading faster than it is being repaired or replaced, putting services at risk. To help address this, the province implemented the Asset Management Planning for Municipal Infrastructure Regulation, Ontario Regulation 588/17, and it was effective January 1st, 2018. The goal of this regulation is to help improve the way municipalities plan for their infrastructure. The regulation builds on the progress municipalities have made while being consistent and standardized to asset management plans to help spread best practices throughout the sector and enable the collection of comparable data. Municipalities are expected to continuously improve and implement their existing asset management plans in accordance with the requirements. Municipalities must continually improve the asset data that informs our condition of these assets, the long-term costs, levels of service, and risks. Asset management planning is an ongoing and long-term process that allows municipalities to make the best possible investment decisions for our infrastructure, including building operations, maintenance, renewal, replacement, and disposal. Some of the goals that we have, provide sustainable services to residents, optimize municipal infrastructure asset value while minimizing life cycle costs, and managing risks to service delivery. So we just have a little chart that's been updated from our last asset management plan. So it shows where we started, where we've been, and the updates that we need to do in 2025. So our 2025 update will include the asset management plan for all assets. It'll include the proposed level of service for the next 10 years, an updated inventory analysis, life cycle management strategy, financial strategy and addressing any shortfalls, and a discussion of how growth assumptions impact life cycle and financial strategy. This diagram was also included in the latest asset management plan. It shows the alignment between corporate strategy and asset management at the town of Huntsville. So the town of Huntsville has an asset management policy, management plan that were both updated in 2024. The planning and policy development provides clear details on what the town's current asset needs are and the priorities, which can help in the development of the municipality's multi-year budget. And we'll be doing an update as we said earlier, in July of 2025. To go over just quickly the asset life cycle. So we can summarize the life cycle of an asset into 4 categories: planning, establishing asset requirements, replacement or new and allocating budget; acquisition, so procuring the asset, defining the costs and requirements, considering risks and our goals; maintenance includes operating and maintaining the asset throughout its useful life, and it also includes monitoring and improving the asset where it's needed to extend its life; and then disposition of the asset, so controlling the disposal of the asset, resale, recyclement, or replacement. Next, we'll talk about service levels. The town measures the service levels in 2 different ways. So community service levels are plain language descriptions or measurements of services that the community receives, and technical levels of service are key technical attributes of service that are being provided to the community. Proposed levels of service. In the 2025 update, the town plans to establish proposed levels of service over a 10-year period. We need to consider community expectations, fiscal capacity, regulatory requirements, corporate goals, and long-term sustainability when we are creating these proposed levels of service. Thought it'd be a good time to do a little flashback to the budget presentation and put this little slide back in that shows our capital contributions. The capital levy is a town putting money aside into our capital reserves, and when we have our capital projects, that's us taking the money back out of the reserves. So the financial strategy identifies concepts and strategies for long-term funding for the life cycle management. This includes consideration of tax rate impacts, available funding sources, infrastructure funding deficits and shortfalls. So the total replacement of our town's existing capital, these assets that have been included in the town's inventory at this time. We take the total replacement cost of these assets and divide it by the estimated useful life, and that gives us the recommended annual and average annual contribution to capital. For the town of Huntsville, the recommended average annual contribution is 19.5 million, and we're not quite there yet, but that's okay. Just as for the 2024 numbers, 19.5 million is the recommended based on our asset inventory, and the contributions we made in 2024 were 6.9 million, giving us a funding gap of 12.6 million. Again, this slide is from the budget presentation, but it's important to note that the town has recently completed a roads needs study, which may impact the replacement values of our roads inventory. As well, appraisals and building condition assessments are currently being completed on the town's building inventory, which may result in a significant increase in the value of the inventory. Increasing the value of the inventory will increase the green bar on the slide because that is based on the value of the assets over the life of the asset. It's likely that contributions will be recommended to increase even further in subsequent budgets. If the funding gap increases, it will result in inaccessible assets or assets that are not in optimal use as we use them. So we need to balance growth, catch up with overdue maintenance of existing assets, finance the replacement of old assets, and modernize our infrastructure to be better prepared for tomorrow's challenges, all while striving to keep property taxes low for residents. This is a video that the Municipal Finance Officers Association has put out, and I think we're going to play it here for you. It's only a few minutes long.
Pride in providing and maintaining the many services citizens depend on every day, like transportation, clean drinking water, recreation, garbage collection, and recycling. For instance, the municipality of MFOA has approximately $20 billion in municipal infrastructure assets that are critical to delivering these services. These include roads, bridges, sewer and water systems, recreation facilities, and parks. The municipality of MFOA is similar to many municipalities. They're facing challenges because of aging infrastructure. Many of their assets are reaching the end of their life cycle, and there's a need for new infrastructure to service growth. This is where asset management planning comes in. Asset management planning is the process used to help make the best possible decisions regarding the building, operating, maintaining, renewing, replacing, and disposing of infrastructure assets. Simply put, it's all about making the right decision at the right time for the right amount. Municipalities focus on three fundamental goals: providing sustainable services to residents, optimizing municipal infrastructure asset value while minimizing lifecycle costs, and managing risks to service delivery. For example, the municipality of MFOA takes a proactive approach and initially developed a corporate asset management plan in 2014. In 2019, the municipality developed a new policy and updated its plan to meet the new provincial regulation requirements and improve management of all assets. The planning and policy development process provides a clear, detailed picture of our assets, needs, and priorities, which plays an important role in the development of the municipality's multi-year budget. An optimal amount of funding is required to manage current and future asset risks. The difference between the optimal amount and available budget is what we call the infrastructure gap. If the infrastructure gap increases, it will result in inaccessible assets or assets that are not in optimal use. So, we need to balance growth, catch up on overdue maintenance of existing assets, finance the replacement of old assets, and modernize our infrastructure to be better prepared for tomorrow's challenges, while striving to keep property taxes, water, and wastewater rates reasonable for residents. The municipality of MFOA's corporate-wide asset management plan is how they prioritize infrastructure needs to achieve the greatest benefit to the community and to ensure the municipality is a great place to live now and well into the future. For more information on asset management planning, visit MFOA's website.
And that's the end of the training. So I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. And you're
Thank you, Chair Renwick, and thank you, Suzanne, for that presentation. I have kind of a two-part question. I recognize the benefit absolutely of asset management planning. It's required, and for all of the reasons you pointed out, it makes all the sense in the world, and I understand we have to do it. So it's sort of a two-part question because on one hand, I think Huntsville is actually in pretty good stead as to our asset management planning process. I think we were out ahead of a bunch of municipalities who sort of last minute started their process much later. So the first question is that true as far as our comparison to other municipalities? From a planning perspective, are we in good shape? Like we've done all of our homework in that sense. So that's the first question. And you're flipping through to, it's not critical. I just was sort of curious if we're sort of in good shape as far from a planning perspective.
Yeah, so I think we're on track definitely with our regulatory requirements, and I believe it was the 2020 asset management plan for core updates. I believe we were a year before. The
everybody.
deadline?
That's sort of what I
Not-
was thinking.
The deadline, I think.
So,
Believe.
so from that perspective, that's good. And the second part of my question is it's one of those that there's part of me, when we talk about the funding gap, I think that given, I suspect every municipality in the province has the same issue with the funding gap, right? Because as we identify the cost of our infrastructure replacement, obviously costs go higher and higher. And we have basically, with the exception of some of the grants that are available through this program and all of that, we're relying on our tax, our property tax base. And so it becomes harder and harder to bridge that funding gap that is huge. So one, how do we compare to other municipalities with respect to our funding gap? And two, I think, as I recall during our budget process, our trajectory is we're actually over time trying to narrow that. And that's probably the most important thing.
Yes, through Chair Renwick. I can't say exactly where we compare. I'd have to do some digging for some numbers, but in my personal professional experience, I think we're doing well based on we have money we're putting aside for reserves. We're looking at our asset funding gap over a number of years to try and reduce that. So I think we're making the right steps towards that. Yeah.
Do you have another question?
Just the last part of it, it's more of a comment because I think that's great. And that's probably what we can count on. You know, we'll never get to that 100%, but as long as we're moving in that direction, I just think it's really unfair because it's harder and harder for municipalities to do that because we're asked to make expenditures in areas that are not traditionally municipal expenditures, like healthcare. Things that were the presentation we had earlier, that we're putting money aside and we're using our property tax base to do that. So it just becomes increasingly difficult to actually try and meet the goals that we set out for us. So it's, you know, on one hand, the province is asking us to do this, on the other hand, they're asking us to do more with very limited resources. So it just bugs me. So there you go. I've had my rant. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Your Worship. CAO Corey, yeah.
I looked at the wrong person. I apologize. Thank
No
you,
worries.
Chair Renwick. So when we bring the financial strategy back for the AMP, that will also show a bit more of an indicator about how well we're doing and how we can lessen the gap. So that's coming forward as well.
Thank you, CAO Corey. And I believe the 2003 financial indicator review that we just looked at does speak to some of this as well. We're actually not in a bad way, which is great. But my question was too, and if you don't mind me just jumping in, but what was happening before 2019? Like, was there an asset management program before 2019 when the province stepped in to say you need to do this? What were we doing before to help us with asset management? Before your time as well, Suzanne. But
I don't think there was any regulatory requirements prior to 2019. So it's relatively, it was brought in 2019. So
in-house, yeah. Are there any other comments or questions around the table? No. So that was just for information as well, but thank you, Suzanne. And I believe there's another part to the training that we'll do I think at the March general meeting. So thank you. And I believe at this time I will pass the chair back over to Mayor Alcock.
Well, thank you, Councillor Renwick, for basically, you should have been in this chair today because basically you carried most of the meeting today. An excellent job. Thank you. And the land acknowledgement. So all of it today. Thank you very much for that. The last item we have is under new business, and it's really our discussion around what we should do with respect to the deputation from David Rushy. Are there suggestions? We do have a proposed motion. So would you like me to put it on the screen? And then, okay, good. We're so ready. That's so great. And Councillor Kluczek? Okay. I might need do I need a mover? No, we've actually got a mover. We have a mover. It's not my day. We have a mover and a shaker. Excuse me. It has been moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Armour, whereas committee received a deputation from Muskoka Community Futures Development Corporation regarding the physician recruitment incentivized loan program with a request to consider covering the interest. Now, therefore, it is recommended that staff be directed to investigate a partnership with Muskoka Community Futures Development Corporation, including the potential funding source on the physician recruitment incentivized loan program. Questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just curious, should we have a time frame on this when they have to come back, or just leave it open?
To ask CAO Corey if you would respond to that. Please.
Thank you, Chair Alcock. I would suggest we do leave it open because staff will have to try to fit
Figure it
this
out.
in. It will require potentially some amendments to our physician recruitment agreement. So we would ask that we be granted a little bit of time to put this in place, but we appreciate and understand the importance of it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. The only reason I was asking is because we're already in the program, so
Right.
people start coming to us, so that's fine though.
Yeah.
Staff take as much time as they need.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions with respect to that? Okay. Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. All right. We know that that's done. All right. We don't have any items in the closed session, and we don't therefore have business arising from a closed session. Before I adjourn to close this meeting, I'm going to ask CAO Corey, why is it we're all wearing pink today?
Well, thank you, Chair Alcock. The reason we're all wearing pink today is because it is the annual Pink Shirt Day, and it is held in Canada, and it is the last Wednesday of February. And it actually started in 2007 in Canada, and bullying clearly is a major problem that we see in our schools, our workplaces, our homes, and online. So Pink Shirt Day aims to raise awareness of these issues, as well as raise funds to support programs that foster children's healthy self-esteem. So thank you for all those that were able to participate. We did get the notice out a little late last night, so I understand why not everybody was able to do that today. So thank you.
Thank you for updating all of us, and for anybody out there who might be listening, an absolutely worthwhile cause. I'm very proud to be wearing pink today. All right, I only have one motion left, and it has been moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Schumacher. It is recommended that we do now adjourn at 10:07 a.m. All those in favor? And that carries all the way around. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.